this month, we're going to be deep diving into where to keep client notes. So we're going to cover lots of things today, lots of options and ideas. And I see a lot of familiar names, but I see some that aren't as familiar to us and that may be new. So let's go ahead and do a quick intro on us really quickly. So we are Jody and Erica, and we started Hughes and Strong Consulting a couple of years ago because we realized that we are big nerds. We really love all things systems and workflows and SOPs and how does it work in this software and what can you do to work around it. So we are able to focus just on this and to share lots of different ideas about how you can use Keeper and how to make it flow with whatever tech stack you're working with. So we are strong believers that there is not one way. Everybody does things a little bit differently. We're all in different spots in our business. So some of us have been using certain tools and we're moving to Keeper. Some of us are Keeper exclusive. So be careful with the shoulds here. We try really hard not to add more shoulds, but be careful about adding that to yourself. All of these are just inspiration, but please, if I can give you one piece of advice, don't walk away from this presentation with more overwhelm or more, oh my gosh, I'm only scratching the surface with Keeper, and that being heavy. This is just ideas for you to play around with. Some of you may be in a spot where you're like, awesome, I'm going to file this away for after January 15th. Others of us may be able to play with this right now. So take it in your own time, take these as inspiration, and be careful about putting more weight or to-dos on your shoulders.
So today we are, as Erica mentioned, we're going to do a deep dive on common client information and details that we might want to keep and where we can store those inside of Keeper. And then as usual, we will open up the floor to any and all questions that you might have about utilizing or optimizing Keeper or any features that you might want to take a deeper dive into or a sneak peek into. So to get us started, let's open up about client information. Erica, how would you answer this question? Why do we need to keep client notes in the first place?
So I think some of us have an intuitive answer, but the most common answer for a lot of us is like, I hate having to dig for info when I need it. Like, I hate the moment when I have to go stop my day to go figure out what was in scope or who are my sales tax clients again. So, making info easy to get to in whatever system you're using is having to stop less, right? Is making it to where while it's fresh, I can put that somewhere that's easily storable and easy to get to so that myself or anybody on our team can learn what they need to for this client. And sometimes it can be used as a training tool to get a new contractor up to speed about some of the client nuances. An extra sprinkle on top of the cake is that storing notes in a consistent place means that it's really easy for the software jumps that we have to make. So sometimes we keep SOPs in a Loom or in a Google Drive or in a Notion. That's perfectly fine, but let's keep those links or some of that navigation easy to get to and in a consolidated place so that when a new contractor has to go look something up or it's a yearly thing and we haven't done it in a while, we don't have to, again, stop our day and then go hunting around in Google Drive. So all of this is about making it streamlined so that anybody that needs this information on your team has it at their fingertips and doesn't have to go digging.
Right. And I'm sure that most of you or many of you are like me and Erica, where we have so much in our head that it's easy to forget something or it's easy to misplace it, or you're like, I know this, but in those moments, having that consistent place to go to with all of the notes there just takes that load off of your brain and makes it a lot easier to manage other things.
Exactly.
So what types of information might we want to have easily accessible? So here's a list of them. This list could go on and on and on, but these are some of the really popular ones. Everything from, like Erica was mentioning, shared drive links or resources, like your Loom trainings or any of those things, services and scope, and then other client details and information that maybe you don't use every day, but you do have to reference them on occasion. So all of this information can be really handy.
So one thing we're going to put a pin in and not going to address a bunch today is password management. So
Mm.
this is client info that we do need at our fingertips, but Keeper does not have an integrated password manager. I know there's some other systems that do. Keeper does not. So our professional recommendation is going to be not to keep your passwords in Keeper because it is not a secure place and it's not easy to share with some team members, but not all, those sorts of pieces, and making sure that it's not visible. So this is one that we're going to table and supplement with another system that is more robust and easy to share different passwords in different folders.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of options out there. We listed just a few here to give you guys an idea and some examples there. But let's dive into the information that we can keep in Keeper and where we could put those. So client notes is a really great space, and we'll show you how to get to those in just a minute, and all of the different avenues that you can use within there. But here's a quick peek at them that they can be used for call notes. So some people will enter in a note each time they have a call, just to have that recap there and all of them in the same place. But it can also be treated similar to a Google Doc or another shared document, where it's just an ongoing living, breathing document that you update regularly.
And this one's a pretty fun one because it actually lives within the client page. So if you're looking at your client page and you go up to the info button up at the very top, then you go over to the notes tab and you'll see a running kind of log history of these different notes that you can open up. This is really cool because it actually shows the note history of who's edited it in the past. So that's a pretty cool ability to kind of think back through. But this is one area that you got to be careful with. It does not autosave, which we are blessed that many areas in Keeper do autosave, but I can't tell you how many times Jody and I have written something really elaborate and gotten it formatted right and gone back to it, and it's the version you just started with before you made all those edits. So make
Yeah.
sure you're hitting the save button on this one. But this is a really cool, a lot of us think about this like an integrated Google Drive where you can keep different docs and notes all inside of Keeper so anybody on your team can get to them.
Yeah. Another common place to keep some of that information would be in your properties. Keeper comes with a few default options, but this is a space where you can customize and add as many properties as you want. Lives in the same area, the info area. Here are those notes that we just talked about a second ago. And then properties is that first tab here. And we can add those, rearrange them. There's a big variety of things that you can do with this that we'll touch base on here in a little bit.
Like Jody mentioned, there's some that come default in Keeper, but we can always add our own, right? So if I want to think about this as my Excel dashboard or database on all of my clients, and there's not a field, there's not a row that I want, you can go into your client settings. So this is that little wheel icon in the top right corner up by your logo or your initials. All client settings tab on the left-hand side, and then properties. And then this is the magic spot where you can add new properties, delete properties, or reorder them. So this is really cool to be able to kind of adjust what you're going to see. And if this is a new area that you're starting to play with and you're starting to add new fields or properties, then this page is also where you can make bold changes. Because we just mentioned that this lives on the individual clients page, but if I'm updating client birthday for all of my different clients, I don't want to go page by page. So this settings page is where we can do things in bulk and fill in those categories if we're kind of working on multiple clients at once. These are some of our favorite properties. So there's some things that we're going to talk about or that we mentioned on that first page that may live more natively in client notes or in details that we're going to talk about. But these are our favorite properties specifically because we can show them on a client info dashboard on the client list. So I'll show an example on the next slide of that. But if you'll go back for 2 seconds, some of our favorites to have in this kind of field or Excel table style structure are the sign-on date, especially because you can create it as a date property. So you can list in that date, all have the same formatting, have a little calendar you can pull up. The services that you offer, industry, mailing address, you can find some of our favorites here. But again, if we'll flip to the next slide, this means that we can show these properties on our client list and create a saved dashboard, which makes sending client gifts or Thanksgiving notes or anything like that so much easier if we have the address, or filing that year end with CPAs if we have the CPA contact address. So this is one that we can go way down the rabbit hole. And if people have more questions about how to create this dashboard or save view, hold it onto it and let us know, or put it in the chat and we can circle back around to it. But this is a quick intro of why you may have some as properties so that you can create this dashboard style view of that information.
Yeah. And as Erica mentioned, feel free to ask questions throughout this presentation as well, and we'll circle back through the comments to make sure that we capture all of those. But if you are not seeing some of the information that we're talking about, like this information button here, it could be that your screen is minimized. So if you have a screen that's been shortened or smaller and you're missing even the dots or all of these options, expand that or change your view a little bit, and they'll populate for you right there next to your client name on that client page.
Yeah, some of us, we even ran into this on our team this morning, but it's not restricted to like standard users or anything like that. It's just the width of that tab that you're working in. So some of us, if we're working on a big screen and have it to where it's split screen, you may not see these. That doesn't mean you don't have access. Just adjust the width or the zoom on your page and those icons should show up. All right,
Then we
so
also
go ahead, Jody, you got it.
We've got our client details. So we've talked about notes, we've talked about properties. Right there in the middle, we have these client details. And what's really special about this area is that we can also show it on our client page. So this is similar to that notes feature where you have all the same editing abilities here to make links and all of that to break up your text in here. But the really great thing is where we can keep that. So on our client page, if you want it to show, so default, you're going to have your non-closing sections, and then your closing sections. If you come into your firm settings, so this is going to be practice-wide, come to practice and statements, section manager. Right there at the top, you have the option to toggle on to show those client details so that you can see them at the very top of the page. They'll be right below all of your client portal information, and you can keep some of those details and information that you want readily available all the time for your users to be able to have. But
yeah,
one of
let's go
the
back a slide for just a second because I want to touch on this a little bit. So some of us, if we're not using this, may not want it up at the top of the page. Like if it's just going to be blank, clear the clutter, hide it, right? So go into your section manager and just unclick this checkbox, right? Because there's no need for it. We're keeping it somewhere else, and this isn't an area that we're utilizing. But if you are going to utilize it for any degree of reasons, then this is one that showing it makes it to like a sticky note at the very top of the page before anybody starts working on tasks or going into the client portal. So this can be a really cool way to have a couple of notes up at the top that are really easily visible. So that's why you might want to show or hide. It's personal preference, but whatever you choose in your settings will be applicable across all clients. So just keep that in mind that this is an all clients. It's there at the top, whether you're using it or not. So play around with whether you want this shown or hidden for your own team.
Right. And as Kate just mentioned in the comments, it can also be opened or collapsed. So just like your other sections and other areas of the client page, you can minimize it or expand it. One of our recent updates that Keeper released was to these sections and giving us all of these many options for editing our text. So you can see we had some fun creating an example here for you to show you all the different things that we can now do. And the reason we find this exciting is that it's so easy for text to just start blending together, and then it just becomes a big blob on the screen. Being able to edit and have these options in here really helps to break it up, highlight things, draw the eye to different areas. It gives your brain a break as you're going through, and just for most people, or for a lot of people, it just makes it easier to read.
Exactly. It kind of gives our brain the ability to skim, and not in a bad way, but skim in the way that we're finding what we need to quickly instead of having to
Right.
read 100 words on the page to get to what we're hoping to. So you can definitely tell we got excited. I went
Absolutely.
in a couple days ago and was like, Paper, you gave me so many options. So you can definitely play with a lot of fonts and upload images now and lots of really cool things. So this has become a more robust tool, which is why we wanted to highlight it today.
Yes, very exciting.
So now we're going to go into a couple of examples, getting more and more elaborate or utilizing Keeper more and more. Now, again, I'm going to put in that do not put a should on yourself, right? Like be really careful about that. We can do anything along this spectrum, and there's no right or wrong on here. So if you already have something already created in Notion or Asana or Google Drive, awesome. No need to do something crazy or have to move it over to Keeper. Let's just make that link really easy and make and put it in as a hyperlink so that when we're working in Keeper, it's really easy to get to that page. So you do not have to recreate everything in Keeper. If you have it somewhere else, you can start and do a 1.0 or make it easy to navigate by just listing that hyperlink if you already have it somewhere else.
And I think that's the key, is making it accessible, easy accessibility.
Exactly. So going a little bit more elaborate, we can do simple things like, hey, here's a reminder of who you need to CC or to send an email to if we're sending any manual emails. Here's a quick project overview, and here's the Google Drive link for some of those documents. So even just keeping some of that information, couple bits and pieces here and there, makes it to where this is easier for anybody on the team, and that Google Drive is really easy to get to. Getting more fun. So now we
Mhm.
can start to see the idea of like a wiki, if you've heard that from someone else. And maybe we link in reconciliation rules or some of our SOPs about how to gather statements. And then maybe we have some notes on client nuances. So what's the preferences of this client? What's the history? We started with a cleanup, then we, went to ongoing bookkeeping services, and then last year we started payroll. So lots of ideas here, and we have to thank Burnside Bookkeeping for this one. So she started creating a wiki, and I really like this format because it's really simple. You can add in those hyperlinks, but you can see if we show it on the page, that's that left-hand view. So we can see it just that abbreviated version. We can make the links really easy to get to for those other resources. But then if we expand it, we see some more of that client history or nuances that may not have another place to live, but are really helpful for a new contractor getting on board with this client.
And that's what I wanted to point out too, is that it's not going to take up the whole screen. So it does have a limit here, and then it'll expand open.
Exactly. And I think that's really important because if you get into something like this, we don't want this as the whole first page of our
Right.
keeper doc. So adjusting what you have at the top can be really helpful. So go into this with a mindset of play of like, okay, what do I want to be shown when it's minimized or when it's just on the page? And then what else may I want to make easily accessible? So this is one that Tracy from Track One Solutions showed with us. And I was like, Oh my gosh, I'm in love. Again, you don't have to do something this elaborate. It doesn't have to live in Keeper. But I think this is a really good example of what Keeper client details can be if you want to utilize it to the fullest. So you see there's some info on the bank statements, and there's even a loom attached. There's what do we do as far as our services and quick links to get there, contracts, engagement. You can play with a whole host of things. But again, it's not going to take up the whole page. It gets to be that small minimized version on the left-hand side when you're seeing it on the full page.
So quick tip here is that unfortunately, we do not have templates yet for the client details. This would be an example where you could use an unconnected client as a sample client and have it in there where you can copy and paste it in. But just keep that in mind that as of now, there's no templates for these areas.
Yeah, and the reason we even mention this is I I don't want to always be in formatting mode. Like, it's not something that when I'm really busy, I want to spend the time being like, what was that? Was it heading 2 or heading 3? Or which font did I use there? So, creating a baseline, and this can even be a really good example for us type A perfectionists that are like, I don't want to roll this out to all my clients until it's good. Play around in a sample client in an unconnected one. You're not charged for those, but once you get this set, then it's really easy to copy and paste and just adjust client by client if you have those fields already set and the colors and whatever you want it to look like formatting wise. This is one that we've also gotten a question about in the realm of client notes is like where to store client rates. So if you are solo, you can absolutely use something like properties. Like there's no harm in doing that. But as our team expands, sometimes that visibility is not something we want open for the entire team. So an easy, safe place to put this is to go into your settings in time tracking. And then over on the far right, you have client rates. So this is a safe space where you can kind of put those, see them in bulk. And plus tip, if you are using time tracking, then this unlocks a whole nother ability to be able to go in and like look at client profitability. So it's something that can expand over time in its overall power in Keeper. But if you're looking for a safe area where most of your team is not going to have this front and center, this in settings is only available to admin users. So standard users and managers will not be able to get to the settings area. So if you are trying to figure out where you want that to live and you don't have another software that you're already keeping track of that, this is a safe spot.
And one quick workflow reminder here is as you're onboarding new clients, you might want to include a reminder or a task for yourself in your onboarding template to update all of these things or add to your notes while everything is still fresh. Now let's open it up for client questions or our Q&A here. So please feel free to pop your questions in. It could be about all of this, the details, the notes, properties, any of those things, or it can be about anything else in Keeper as well.
Yeah, Keeper workflows. How do you create something that we just whizzed by? You keep us
Yeah.
on track and make sure that we're giving you the info to walk away from the session with all of that inspo.
Yeah.
So we'll pop into Amanda's question. So how do you change the background color in client details or notes? Great question, Amanda. This is a new one. There's actually a button here that we can play with. So we'll show you exactly how to get to that button.
Right. So we
So if
have it
we're
shown
going,
here.
yeah,
Go
go
ahead,
ahead. You
Erica.
got it. Okay, so if you click into client info, then let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over right before the fonts has that little like bucket or paint bucket. That's where we can adjust what Keeper is calling the highlight, or that's the background color. So I got a little bit in the weeds this morning, and you can do kind of traditional colors that are there. So you see the full color wheel, or if you click on the word custom, it'll give you an actual wheel where you can create your own. So that's how I got like the HSC teal, was just clicking on custom and then playing with that color. So definitely a rabbit hole. Definitely go into it with a mindset of play, but that's how we can change the background color. And then the button on the left-hand side of that, that underlined A, is how you can change the color of the text. So those are your two buttons for the color. Great question, Amanda. Nice. Thanks for showing us some of those options. Like I said, there's a ton in here now, which is
Yeah.
really, really cool. So we even have our own searchable emoji library, which you can tell I'm a nerd about this stuff when I get excited about emojis. But the fact that we now have integrated emojis and I can search it for the little nerd face or whatever, just made me really excited about that. So that and the fonts and the heading are some of the most new. One thing I do want to mention, there is a picture or an image icon. You can absolutely use that to upload something that you already have, like a PDF doc or something like that, for a JPEG, but you can copy and paste from another doc. That was something that I was playing with that we could do before. You can still do that. Now you just have the additional ability to upload something directly from your files or drive or finder.
All right.
While we're on client details, I'm going to hit a couple of these questions that are relevant, and then I'll pop around back to some of these other questions. So, Heather, great question about how can you move that client details section to a different spot on the page. Right now, we do not have the ability to move it underneath our tasks or underneath that non-closing area or anything like that. It is just our options are to show and hide, but it's always going to natively live above the non-closing task. So really great
Right.
question there. Okay, beautiful. So let's pop back and make sure we're not missing anybody's question. So Jody, I'm going to hit you with this one because I think it's a
Yeah.
really good one for us to bounce back and forth on. Monica asks, I have Keeper, but I feel overwhelmed with where to start. So do you have any suggestions on a concise resource, or just let's give some tips on just kind of how to condense that whole Mount Everest of where to start? It's a really hard one.
Yeah, absolutely. So Keeper has built out some YouTube videos, specifically getting started group of those videos. So that's a great place to start to get little pieces and their recommendations for where to start. Our general recommendation, as far as just diving in, is to start out with what's already built into Keeper. Getting familiar with it and just playing around and clicking around can be helpful. Um, it's so easy to get overwhelmed with everything that you can do. So picking one thing at a time can be very helpful. So whether that one thing is, at this close period, I just want to get more familiar with the reports, the tasks that are built into the transaction review area in this section, because that pulls from your accounting software and you can do so much for your closing period through those reports. So maybe to get started, you just go through those reports and get familiar with them. Or if you're focused more on onboarding and that kind of thing, maybe you do start with, okay, I'm going to get organized with client information and where I want to house that. But I would say you pick one thing at a time, and then maybe each close or between each close, you choose one more thing. So Erica, what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great concept just to kind of anchor into is like, I think the most overwhelming part of this is that it's a buffet. And you're like, oh my gosh, I want a little bit of everything. But start with a small plate, and then pick a couple of things that you either don't have somewhere to live, or the place that you have them in right now is just like not accessible. So if you got Keeper because of these month end reports to make your closes more efficient or to be able to double check the work on your team, start there. Just take that little chunk and then expand over time. If you're really excited about this concept and you've been playing with Keeper for a while, or you don't have a good area for client notes and you find yourself struggling with where to put those, maybe that's the area you play with. So I would echo that, like, take it a plate at a time, finish that one, or get it to a workable area, because man, I have to remind myself it is never going to be perfect. You're always going to find new features and things that you're like, oh, you could do this. So I would say be really careful about what you put on your plate and just put on the things that are going to give you and your team the biggest mileage, and then expand over time as you have capacity or as you start to grow into other features. So just so that I give kind of resources here, I did go ahead and link Keeper's YouTube page. They have a lot on getting started or just clips about different features. So if you're like, okay, I think I'm going to start with these transaction reviews because that seems really cool to make our close more efficient, watch a couple of videos on that, or go to our YouTube page as well and watch a deep dive like this about some of those different areas. But I would say be really careful and take it a step at a time. We're always here if you want kind of that like double set of eyes. Like, I don't know if I'm doing this right, and I just need some more inspiration, and I don't know what I don't know. We're always here to do diagnostic reviews or to hop on a call with you. But I would say start small, start with the thing that's going to be the most impactful or help you guys' efficiency the most, and then build off of it as you have more excitement about something or as you have more capacity. So I know that's a huge question and we didn't even
Yeah.
scratch the surface, but I'm hoping that at least got you started with a couple of tips to at least minimize the overwhelm.
Yeah. And absolutely keep asking questions. The Facebook group is very, very active. So if you're on there, you can do that. Like Erica said, we're resources. There's a bunch of resources out there. Just keep asking those questions. There's plenty to support you in it.
Great mention, Jody. All right, let's go to the next one.
Yeah.
So Kinsey asked, what's the best way to use footnotes in Keeper? So she's using Zenit for QC and was kind of putting a comment on that like sheet that she was sending or her management reports. So let's kind of talk about when and why you might use a footnote. I think that's a really great question that we don't
Sure.
often get. So let's kind of take the time on that one.
Yeah. So if correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe we're talking about on our reports here being able to add footnotes for our clients to see. Oh, I always need to go back to an older close to get more
The demo
information
that we
about our
actually
pages.
have info on. That's the
So give
problem
me
with the
just a
demo
second.
account.
It doesn't always have up to date financials in there. This will have more to it. Okay. So on one of our reports, next to the account name, we have our internal chat. So the chat bubble here, this is going to be within our team. The clients will not see this information. But right next to that, we do have a place to add a footnote. So we can do that as we are reviewing the reports here on the close page. And we can save that. So now we know we have a footnote here. So as we're going through, we can add those in. We can also do the same thing from our reporting tab as we're reviewing our management report before we send that over to the client. So we'll pull this up so that we can see what it looks like. And that was on that profit and loss. And those footnotes are going to come down here at the very bottom, of course. So you'll see that there's a little number here, footnote at the bottom. If while you're in here, you decide you want to add more footnotes, that is available. Click up here, add a footnote, find the account you want to add it to, etc. there. So let's revisit Erica. What's her question again, now that we know where they are and how we can add them?
Yeah, let me skim through and make sure I got it. One sec. Okay, so yeah, it looks like this is going to cover that. So we
Okay.
can add footnotes in that profit and loss or balance sheet. Jody, cover really quickly. Is there any way to put footnotes in the account reconciliation section, or is this mostly for the like profit and loss and balance sheet? That's what I understand, but I just want to make sure we're not missing anything.
This is just for your management reports here. Your reporting.
Okay. Perfect. So footnotes here, I actually didn't even know that we could add it on this page. So that little button up there on the right-hand side hid for
Yeah.
me. So I'm glad that you pointed it out. So the footnotes are going to be visible to your clients on their management reports. Now, one other option that's right next to footnotes is if there's internal team comments that you need to leave, you absolutely can leave a comment. So that's kind of comments versus footnotes, just to cover that while we're here. Footnotes are going to be visible to the client on that management report, right? So it'll have a number next to it and a key down at the bottom. And then if we wanted to add any team comments, that's the icon to the left of it between internal chatter.
And Kenzie, feel free to continue to ask comments or ask questions if we didn't get deep enough into the answer there.
Yeah, absolutely. Alrighty, so next up, go into our client list. Can you show some creative ways to use the Kanban board? So the Kanban board is something that a lot of us didn't even realize was there. It took me a long time to realize that it existed. So in your client list, up on the left-hand side, you have Kanban or list options. So at this point, Kanban can just be filtered, or it can't be filtered beyond just showing by status. And these are the closed statuses that you've created up in your settings. So this can show kind of clients in each stage of the process and make it a little bit easier to notice clients that are stuck, especially if you get that long, lengthy list and it starts making your eyes go a little bit fuzzy. This is an easy way for that to be filtered into different categories, similar to like a Trello board or something like that if you've used that in the past. So at least at this point, this is not something that we can filter or have as much adjustment as we can on the list style, where we can create that dashboard view. Right
Right.
now, Kanban is just by status.
And that status is the close status. So if we go back over to our client list, it's going to be this status here. So whatever options you have in here, those will be the columns for your Kanban. So if you want to use this in a different way, the only way to customize this view here is by customizing those status options, which you can do from your practice settings here under workflows, close status options. This is where all of those will be, where you can add, edit, notifications, all sorts of things can go in here. But yes, this
Yeah.
view is always going to be driven by that status.
Exactly. Really good mention there of how to find that. Now, again, don't put shoulds on yourself. This is our play account. So I don't anticipate that you will need this many statuses. It is
Yeah,
okay if your list doesn't look as lengthy as ours. Ours are just so we can show different examples like we are today. But that's kind of Kanban style. And then Jody, if you don't mind, let's take 20 seconds and just show this list and how you might be able to filter it to that saved kind of like client dashboard that we had. So if
yeah,
you can show people how to actually like show and hide those different columns and save that view, let's go ahead and cover that while we're in this mode and kind of on this topic.
absolutely. Yeah. So you can see here at the very top, this is where you can change your view. Again, we've got lots in here because we do examples all the time. But as a default, it's going to show you all of this, which can be a lot of information. It's going to give you your chats, your assignments, and all of that. And all of your sections are all here as well. Sometimes it's really helpful and you need that information. Other times it's too much and you want to reduce what you're looking at. So if you come here to this grid, it's edit columns. This is where you can show and hide anything that you have in here. So once you start clicking, you'll see in the background that it changes. So you'll know what's being pulled in and what's not. So you can select or deselect any of the information that's in here. Keep in mind, this is just show and hide. This is not turning on or off. So for example, prepare, reviewer, manager, All of these are things that you can enable or turn on or turn off. This is simply just hiding it from your view if you uncheck it. And all of those custom properties that we talked about, we showed, trying to uncheck all of those. That's the other thing you can do is you can uncheck the entire group if you would like to with this. But again, we have a huge playground in here for all the different examples that we give. But maybe we just want to know the primary contact. Let's see. Where's something good?
Yeah, this is one that you can play around with. I
Gotta find
actually
all of them.
saved one in, if you'll go
You can pick
to
and
that
choose.
saved
Yeah.
list, in the drop down, I actually played around with one this morning that had some of the most like relevant options.
Once you do this, hide and show, whatever you want, you'll come here to save view and you can save it. So that way you don't have to recreate it every time. What did you name it, Erica?
It's that star, two asterisks at the very top.
Find it. Here we
There you
go.
go. So this is one with the custom properties. You can adjust the columns on this so that you can see it a little bit better when you're in here and using this view. But this is where you can start to play around, like so Jody said, play around with what you want shown and hidden on this view. And then when you have it somewhere that's like, I really like what it looks like and how many are on the page and that sort of thing, you can save this view. And with any saved view here inside the client list, you can make it private, so just for me, or firm wide. If it's something that my team is going to have to go back to, I would much rather them not have to go property by property and make this exactly the way they want to. So this is definitely something that you can play with over time, but this is how we created that save view dashboard style.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you actually showed something that I want to cover as well. This is something that you can download as a CSV now, which is really cool. So if this is something that you're like, oh, good gosh, I cannot work on this, but I need to like highlight or I need to export this to somewhere else and save it, this is a whole lot easier now. Very
Or you're a
much
paper
like,
person. Yeah, or you're a
yes,
paper
that's what
person
I
and you
was
want it
gonna
printed
say.
out.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're one example that I heard here recently was doing like Thanksgiving notes for everybody, and they were like, I just need to highlight it. So we set her a save view with that information that she needed, like the contact name and the address. And then we downloaded that CSV so she could go through and highlight or strike through on her little paper. So definitely lots of areas that you can play with on this save view to make that dashboard. Alrighty, Jody. So if you don't mind going into a client, I'll queue up our next question. So Kelly, you have a great question about like how did you show that on where it minimizes? So what we did was we went into settings, we enabled it or showed it on the client page so it shows up here, right? And then you can, this is its default size. So it just shows some of the first lines. That's kind of that minimized version. And then when you click into it, that's when you're going to see the full version and can make other edits. So Jody, if you don't mind showing us while you're live in this account, how to get to that section manager and where to kind of click that checkbox.
Sure. So to get to the section manager, there's actually quite a few ways you can get there. Fastest or not fastest, but one way is to come up here to your practice settings. The other way is to click on the dots off to the side for section manager on any of these areas, and they'll all get you to the same place. So section manager is here in those practice settings. And then right here at the top, if I turn that off, come back out, it's now gone. We'll come back in, toggle it back on, and it's going to bring it right back. But this is the exact same information that is found here. So if you want to utilize this, but you don't want it to show, you can, or if you want to build them out before you show them, it's all right here. And then you have that option to hide or show it. And then of
Beautiful.
course we
Thanks, Jody.
can minimize it.
Oh, yeah. Actually, will you highlight that button? A lot of us don't realize that it exists, but up at the very top
Yeah.
underneath the client name, there's this magical button. If you are anybody who has a low visual threshold for overwhelm and it's just like, oh my gosh, there's too much on the page, this button is going to be your best friend. It's mine, at least.
Yeah,
And it
absolutely. Mine
just
too.
collapses that so that you can open up the sections that you want to and not have it all in your face all at once.
Yeah. That is one of my biggest tips for people who are getting familiar with this and find it overwhelming, because there's just so much information in here, is to just the second you come in, collapse it all and then just go to what you need. It is sticky. So if you are working on something and you're going to go from client to client, if you only have one section open and you decide to switch clients, it's going to stay that way. It'll only show that one section. Um, so again, that can be helpful if maybe you're working payroll and you're going client by client in a payroll section. You could just have that one section open and go client by client, simply going through the list there to switch them. And it's still the same thing. You can see everything else is closed, but I just got that one open. That's helpful. What other
Great
questions
mention
do
there,
we
Kinsey.
have out there today?
So I have a handful more. I'm going to pause for 2 seconds. We will stay after if we need to kind of wrap up a couple minutes and
Mm.
we didn't get to your question. Don't fret, we will get to it, but by the end of the time that we log off, we try to never leave an open question because that just sucks to come on and ask a question and then you can't get it answered. So we'll stay on a little bit after. But if you are a friend who has another call coming at the top of the hour, we just wanted to pause and thank you so much for spending a little bit of your Wednesday with us. It is a bonkers season. So give yourself a pat on the back for taking some time to learn. That's not something that all of us create space for. So give yourself a pat on the back. If there are anything, like if you need additional help in Keeper, there is our YouTube channel that has all of our previous recordings. So if you want to go binge something else about metrics or lots of other tiny features like that deep dive we did today, those are all uploaded. So binge to your little heart's desire. We have these monthly Q&As every third Wednesday of the month. So we'll have another one in January. And then we have a free resources page on our website. So there's that little QR code or the link there if you want to find out more about saved views or customizing your client portal or anything like that, and you want kind of that free PDF style of inspiration. And then that being said, we are just all of our energy is going toward Keeper. So if you are somebody who needs support anywhere along that spectrum, we just shared some of those free resources like these Q&As and those resources, but we do have a full scale. So if you need a little bit of team training or a brainstorming session with somebody that you just need to talk out what you want and how to get it in Keeper, we're here for you. If you need a diagnostic review, so another set of eyes and some suggestions on how your team is expanding or how to grow into different areas of Keeper, we can absolutely do that. And then we have full service from there as well. If you would like templates and some support while you figure it all out or set it up, or if you want some hands-on, like I'll tell you what I need, but please do the clicking for me. I just don't have the time. We can help all along that spectrum. So feel free to reach out to us and let us know if you need help to kind of lift some of the setup, especially if you got yourself excited today and you're like, I don't have time for any of that. Just reach out. We're happy to help in any capacity.
Absolutely. So again, for anyone who has to jump off, feel free to do so at your leisure here. For those who we still have questions out there, we're going to stay on, like Erica said, until all the questions are answered. So stick around if you would like, and we will jump back over to the demo and keep going with those questions.
Exactly. And
What's
for
next?
anybody who's curious, we do have the recording that'll be out on
Yeah.
Friday. I'll send it out to everybody in our email list so that you have access to that. And then if there's any cool feature requests that we talked about today or any resources that I can link to on the Keeper side or on our side, I'll do so in the description of that YouTube video. So don't fret if you need to hop off and you want to hear these last couple of questions, you'll be able to get them in the recording on Friday. Alrighty, so hopping back into a couple questions, Kinsey has another wonderful question about what's the benefit of starring a report. So inside of
Yeah.
that, we can star quite a bit of those tasks, but what's the actual, like, why would you use that?
Right. So the purpose of the star, and you can see it if you hover over. So you see, like, it's not showing, hover over that, and it's showing, you can click it to star it. This is a feature to mark something as a high priority. So it'd be something that's like above all other things. This one needs to be done first, or this one is extremely important and cannot be missed. So you have that quick view of, okay, it's starred. I know I need to do that, but it also will drive some other areas of Keeper. One of those being your task list, and one of the quick filters that the task list has here. You'll see over here on the side, high priority. Click on that, and it's only going to show you those tasks that have been starred. If you have the daily digest turned on and you're getting those emails every day, the high priority, the ones that have been starred, will be at the very top of that email of that daily digest. So that is just a high priority feature that Keeper added in there so that you can mark those.
I think one thing that's really important to note on this is in the non-closing section, we can use tags. And some people use like a high priority or back burner or urgent or something like that tag. The issue becomes that we don't have the ability to do that in the closing section. So I can't do the same tags in that month end close section. So high priority is across all task sections. So that may be one area that you can use that high priority star to kind of play around with, okay, team, hell or high water, the craziest you're going to be, these things have to be done. Otherwise, we'll filter them as we need to. So that's that high priority star. Really great question.
There is another star in here that is a bit similar as far as you don't see it until you hover over something and then there's a star. So on all of the task names, that star equals high priority and is that trigger and that flag for how Keeper notifies you or that task information. Inside of these statements, so your reports here, you also have a star feature. This one, though, marks it as a key account. So if I star this and then go look into my reporting, it's going to show up as a key account in the report. Give it a second to load. So there is an option for key accounts on the report. By default, I believe it's there, but you can always
Yeah, I was going
remove
to
it
say
if you
this
don't
is a
want it.
default, but we've removed it if it's an area that you're not using.
Right. So because I starred that, it is now here as a key profit and loss account. So just to let you know that there is another hidden star in there, and this is where that one leads you. Okay, what's our
Exactly.
next
And
question? Yeah.
we've tested this one, so it is sticky month over month. You can absolutely like unstar it, but we were like, oh, do I have to star this every time if I want to show like cogs or something like that? No, it is sticky and it will save month over month. So unstar if you don't want it this month, but that will overlap. While we're on that, Jody, do you have any accounts that you would recommend starring for key accounts? Is there any that come to mind for you that might be a good candidate for that?
I feel like that's really dependent on your client and their industry and what might be the most helpful for them. COGS might be a great example for some of those industries that need those. It's going to be, I would think of it as like, what's the most impactful information that I could give my
If
client?
they're
A lot of
Yeah, if
clients like
they're
the
not going to read the
full,
P&L, yeah, exactly. I think
right,
we're on the
the
same
full,
page.
exactly, the full profit and loss or balance sheets, some of they're just like, okay, these are just numbers on a page. It's just words. It's too much and it's overwhelming. This page, you can just cherry pick. Like, I just want these very key things, these very important ones that, like, above all else, please just notice these numbers. And again, that could
Exactly.
vary from client to client and industry to industry. But that's the lens I would look at or look through when trying to figure out what ones I might want to include is, okay, for this particular client who may not want to pay attention to anything else, I really want them to know about how much they're spending on contractors or which services are bringing in the most income, that kind of thing. Like what's going to be the most impactful for that client, and then highlight those here and see what they think.
Yeah,
Good value
Amanda
add.
called them the cliff notes, and I think that's a
Yeah.
great way to think about it of like, okay, if you don't read anything else, please know where you're at on these couple of things, or these directly relate to your goals right now. So please pay attention because you're
Yeah.
paying your contractors way too much, or whatever that actually ends up being. So really good Cliff Notes idea. I think that's a great way to talk about it. All righty, you ready for the next one, Jody?
Bring it on.
Okie dokie. So I'm going to go through one of the so this is a little bit more workaround. So like what would you suggest in this case? So if we have a client that wants to approve invoices before they get sent out, is there a good workflow option to do this in Keeper? She's currently doing this in Financial Sense, so she just wanted to see if there was a way to like link it in an email or send it in like a question and get them to like mark approved. I have a couple, but I wanted to get your take first.
I'm kind of curious on how they're doing it through Financial Sense right now. Um, that's how my brain works. And like, how are you doing it somewhere else? And then I can help you figure out if you can do the exact same thing or something similar in this system. Um, but for invoice approval, let me think about it. Erica, what were your ideas?
Yeah, so if you if your client's used to like a Google Drive and then linking the Google Drive and they go in and approve the most recent and just email you back, that's one way. You can absolutely set up a client template or an email template inside of Keeper to make that easy with the Google Drive link for that client. One of the ways that comes to mind for me is to set up um, a recurring non-transaction question or a
Mhm.
non-transaction question each month. So if it is if you're always putting those invoices in a shared Google Drive or something, you could absolutely go in here and set up a recurring question that drops in let's say you need invoices approved by the 5th of the month or something like that. You can absolutely set that up with the Google Drive link that will drop into their client portal on that specified date. So it takes it off of your plate. Now, if it's more custom and it's like as needed, then I would set it up as an individual one by one, just go in and add a question. And then you could link a file or you could list that Google Drive link if you are kind of doing that concept. So
Mhm.
those are the couple that come to mind for me is utilizing those non-transaction questions and either doing them as a one-off or setting them up as recurring if you can, if there's any like regularity or pattern to that. Yeah, I think that's what my best suggestion would be,
Yeah.
Christy. Feel free to let us know if that didn't help. But I'm hoping that at least gave you a little bit of ideas on there. Okay, see you nodding along. Perfect.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
so welcome. No problem at all. Okay. Oh, I did skip this one, so let's make sure I get to Carissa's question. So she would love to see how we're using that team training or networking unconnected client that we have in our client list. So I'm going to give a preface. This is definitely a little bit out of the box. You do not have to house this in Keeper, but if you are one that's trying to keep everything in Keeper or you're trying to move things over from a more expansive platform like Asana, and you're like, but where do I keep these sorts of things? This is what we've played around with. We'll give you the highlights version, like the Click Notes version, but last month, I believe, we did a full deep dive into unconnected clients that goes more in
Yeah.
the weeds. So we'll give bird's eye view here, Carissa, and then feel free to pop on that last recording that's already up on YouTube if you want to dive deeper into this one.
Right. Right. So like Erica mentioned, it's an unconnected client, which means that we're only utilizing the top portion of that for those two examples, the resources or the training and the networking. And it's just a place to house tasks. And it gives it just like you said, it gives it a place to live. You'll see that we've also used tags for this as well. Um, with the tags, they're only going to show here if they're being used. So that's really helpful in being able to create different ones for different services or different areas of Keeper. So you may not use marketing on any of your clients, but for your internal stuff, that might be helpful. And so you could use that there. This is really just task management and giving it a place to live. Putting it in an unconnected client like this also helps you to limit visibility. So only your admin and select people who you want to have access to it will have access to it. Because you could technically keep this information in firm tasks as well, but firm tasks, that's visible to all users. So this just gives you more
It can get
control
cluttered
and
very
yeah,
easily. It
very
gets
easy to clutter.
overwhelming really fast. So this is a way for you to, like Jody said, kind of give it a home. We've even played around with having a specific non-closing section that you only use in that client.
Yeah,
So it's hidden on everybody else. I just show it on this client so that it's not cluttering up my clients, but it gives me something specific that I could filter my task view by, or just have everything in this category or section.
yeah.
So this is a really cool idea to kind of play around with for those homeless nobody tasks that have to live somewhere. And I would really rather them live in the same place where all my other tasks live, but I don't exactly like, I don't want to use firm tasks or I'm not sure where to use them. That's where we start playing with unconnected clients.
Yeah. And the team training example, this can be used in a wide variety of ways. We did an example where you have a new team member coming in and they've never used Keeper before. You want to help them get used to it, get familiar with it. Having a team training client with tasks that they have to complete helps them get familiar with it. So they have to open the task to view the Loom video, or get the link to this, or the instruction to do XYZ for their own onboarding. Watch different videos and mark that they've completed those videos on where things live, and whatever your team training might be. This just gives them a space to be able to, one, have those tasks assigned to them with due dates if you want them to have those, and have that accountability where you can have the visibility of, did they complete these yet? Are they not? There's a space for chatting if they have questions about it. And it's in the system that you're using. So that's another thing. We're always looking for, how can we make this all inclusive so that those firms who want it to be all inclusive have those options. So if you don't have it living somewhere else, this is a great place for it to kind of be a little bit of a playground. And again,
One
that could
thing
be
to
anything.
note,
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Thanks. So one thing to note on here, some of us have this in like a firm task, right? With like, what does a new team member need to do? And that's a perfectly fine place to do it. The
Yeah,
one issue that we've had with that in the past is that I can't templatize that. Like there's no
that's exactly
templates
what I was
for
going to
firm
say.
tasks yet. Okay, I'm glad we're on the same page. Is I can't templatize that. And I want to think about this once and maybe tweak if I forgot something, but I don't want to have to come up with this from scratch every time I onboard, especially because it's usually a while in between. So I got to restart my brain and like get myself in onboarding mode and make sure it's all the things that I need to remember. You can absolutely, if you're using an unconnected client, create a template for this. So for networking or for like your sales task or for your new hire, any of that is possible in here, and you can organize them however you want. So you can see where emoji people, you can put an emoji at the front where it's all of your team separated out so it's not mixing in with your client tasks. Or you can put just like a title at the front, like team or bookkeeping or payroll or something like that to keep them in order and kind of organized in groups. Since we can't do folders quite yet, we can kind of hack the alphabetizing and start them all the same way
Right.
to keep them organized.
No, that's wonderful because I had my onboarding in firm task, and like you said, it got overwhelming so fast, and now I just had a total aha moment to make it a template because like I had one employee on board and then she like checked them off and then I had to like, uncheck them
And
to like now
reassign. Yep.
reassign them. But if I like make it a template and then replicate it for, the new onboard, oh, okay, that is a wonderful idea. Thank you guys.
Yeah. And I will
Exactly.
say
And
this.
then you
So
can
I was
go
going to
ahead.
say,
You're good.
if you have, say you have two people onboarding at the same time, drop in the template, put their name in the task, even though you're assigning it to them, then you can drop the template in again without it overwriting. And that way you can have two versions of the same task for your two different new hires. So just something to keep in mind as you're applying templates like that, is that if you apply a template and then apply it again, if that task name does not change, it'll just overwrite it.
So do you think
Yeah,
it makes more sense to just keep the team training as one sample client and then apply the new template to that unconnected client, or create a new unconnected client for every new hire?
Me personally, I would have one unconnected client that I use for all team members, all training.
Okay, I'm glad you mentioned that, because
only
I was thinking a new unconnected client every time.
That's just going to
it's a
clutter. I
pro
mean,
or
that
con.
could, yeah, it could clutter up
So
your
I
list
could,
if you.
so not to add more complexity, I
Yeah.
could see an argument. I'm always a devil's advocate kind of person. I could
Yeah.
also, if your intuitive leans toward an unconnected client, then just archive it after you're done. So
That's
it
true.
doesn't have to be anything crazy. You could absolutely just archive that, have it in storage if and when you ever need it, or delete it afterward. So that's not to say and get you into overwhelm land. That's to say both options are viable. Just make
Absolutely.
sure that you're being careful about your clutter. Like that's the only thing that I'll say, is be really intentional about stacking that up. Whether that is new hire or whether you're starting to play with this for like leads or diagnostic reviews, we're always in the vein of templatize it. That's the beautiful thing about using an unconnected client, is I can drop
Yeah.
this in, but then be careful about how you're organizing it so you don't accidentally end up with so much that you're like, oh, I'm not going into Keeper because it's too much. Like that's the point that we want to avoid on that side. But really amazing question, Carissa. This is something that we don't get to play with or talk about super often, but can be massively helpful if you are just trying to use Keeper as the home base and you're like, I don't know where this should live, or it's very cumbersome to use that firm task and then uncheck everybody's name and unclear all the due dates. And then you don't have a record of when that last person did it and how long it took them. So this is a really cool way that you can kind of like hack Keeper and the unconnected clients, so you can still have that kind of checklist and see when somebody's checked it off.
Absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Jody, holy cow. You could tell we can talk about Keeper forever. If there are any last minute stragglers that didn't get a question in, or that last couple of questions sparked a new idea for you, we'll wait just another minute or two, make sure we didn't go too fast for anybody. If you do need some more help, or we dived into something that you were like, actually, can you just take that off my plate? Feel free to email us. We're happy to help. It is the craziest season, so we're happy to help take any or all of this lift off, or brainstorm specifically with you about something you're not sure where it lives in Keeper. So we'll hang on for another minute just in case there's any last minute questions. But thank you all for spending so much of your day with us. Something we
And
really appreciate.
if you do have a last minute question, feel free to raise your hand or just come off of mute.
Yeah,
And
don't
ask
feel like
away.
you have to like speed type. It's all good. Oh, happy holidays to you guys as well.
Yes.
Much
Hard to
appreciated.
believe.
I know, I can't believe it's already
End
that
of the
time.
year.
Goodness me. Oh, Chrissy, while you're still on, you may have seen this in the chat, but for anybody that didn't hear it, another idea for that invoicing back and forth, Eunice actually gave a really good idea that she's doing that in a spreadsheet, and then they can go approve it in that spreadsheet. And then she just sets a client task, like that non-transaction question that goes out with the spreadsheet link. So, and adds that link to the client details, so it's easy to get to for you as well. So that's just an idea out there for any like back and forth that you need to do if just the recurring question by itself isn't quite working for you.